It's time to make over this oversized 6-drawer dresser. It looks like it's in good shape until you look closely, and I think when the last move happened, it just got torn apart. So, time to take off the hardware and get that off of there. And then let's clean it up. This thing was actually pretty dirty, so I want to get all the grime and dust and oils off of it. And then what are these details? I don't know if I like it. I peeled this one off, and I'm thinking I kind of like it better without it. So, time to take the other one off. Rubber mallet and a putty knife usually does it, and yep, did it here too. Just remove the little finishing nails that are there, and time to sand. This had some really deep gouges, and I could have filled them, but I decided to sand them, which sanded a lot way down into the finish. Take out the drawers. As I'm taking them out, I am numbering them. You'll see that they're all curved. They do need to be in their place. I'm struggling with this bottom one, and here's why.
I'll show you this type of drawer guide. I don't see these very often, but what happens is the drawer, see underneath the drawer has a hole in it on both sides. And that is going to go right in here. So this fits over the drawer, the edge of it pops in here, and then there's 2 screws that go up in here to secure the drawer. So this drawer I wasn't able to get out. I thought it was undone, but the screws were still intact. So I come under here, and I had to take out those 2 screws right there, and now the drawer will lift up. All right, hope that helps.
Now that the adventure of removing the drawers is over, we can commence with sanding, because there's still more sanding to do. And all of the drawers. Drawers. These are curved, you can really see it now. And what I was finding while I was sanding these was that the finish was completely failing, so I had to sand it down pretty much to bare wood. And here you can see, I'm trying to get a close-up so you can see what failing finish looks like, but it creates this really orange peel when you're sanding it. And that just doesn't paint nicely, so I have to sand that all down smooth. A little bit more work, but overall the finished product will be better. Okay, it's time to fill those hardware holes, so I'm using this new product by JB Weld. They're multi-purpose putty, and I really like it. It's very similar to Bondo. And I'm pushing the product into the hole because I want to fill the entire hole, not just a thin layer on top. I have a couple of large dents on the drawers that I'm also filling in, as well as the hardware hole. Time to sand that all smooth, and I'm also getting the tops of the drawers. And now I need to address this area. I created kind of a valley, sanding those big gouges out. I probably should have just filled them in and sanded it and been done, but I went kind of crazy with the sander, and now I have to fill in the valley. So again, more of the multi-purpose putty. I've got a big spreader so that it will go across that gap and smooth this all out. Once that sets up, it takes about 15-20 minutes. I can go ahead and sand everything smooth. And it feels pretty good. All right, I think we're all good there. I put the drawers all back in, and it's time to figure out the hardware placement. I've got a clean slate to work with, so I've got to sort of figure it out. How many inches from the edge do I want this to be? So I kind of like that spot. Just measure it and see about where I am. And now that I've filled in all the hardware holes, I couldn't get the drawers out, so I had to slide them. Thankfully, I got one open. Okay, measuring that, I'm going to set up my hardware jig so that all of these drawers, they are all the same size, so I only have to set it up one time, and now I can drill all the holes. So I'm just marking it, drilling it. And I'm just going to do this on all the drawers, of course. But what I am going to do now, so I don't have to fight with the drawers, is put in one of these long adjustable screws. It's going to act as my temporary handles. Put a piece of tape on the back. And now I don't have to fling the dresser forward to try to get the drawers to come out. I can just use this. and it paints just fine. Into the tint we go, and time for primer. I'm using my favorite primer here, which is Stix Primer, tinted in gray. I love it. Cover up all of the unevenness and just make this one uniform color, especially the top. Okay, after the primer dries, the best part about primer is being able to sand everything smooth. This just creates such a beautiful, smooth surface for your paint. I'm using a microfiber towel that's just barely wet to dust everything, and then time for some paint. Just goes on so nicely with I'm using a Wagner Flexio 5000 sprayer. Several coats, sanded in between coats, and now onto top coat. And again, I do several coats of this, and I do also sand in between each one. And since these drawers do go inside the cabinet and I paint with them in, all I need to do now is just touch up the details of the top and the sides. I'm using a little poly brush to do this with rather than a brush. I just like the texture that this leaves. And when I got all done with that, I decided I didn't like the top. I could still feel those areas, so I put Bondo all over it again, sanded it all down again. Now it is finally nice and smooth. Sometimes it was just bugging me. Sometimes you just got to go back and fix it. So primer once again, and I painted it. Time for some hardware. Getting the hardware all on. So pretty. This had feet at one point. So when I got it, it didn't have any feet. But the feet that I purchased for this, it's kind of an odd shape, so I have to go with these big bun feet. They didn't fit in those little receptacles. And now my new one, the T-nuts don't fit in there as well. So I'm just figuring out the placement of where they need to go because these are really big bun feet and I want to make sure that they fit. This hole was fine. The bottom one I have to start over from scratch. And just making sure that the T-nut is like the receptacle for the feet. Make sure it fits flush. And it does not, so I need to recess these into the wood, so I'm using a Forstner bit. And these are a great thing to have. I do use T-nuts quite a bit, so I have a Forstner bit on hand that is the exact same size. Again, it wasn't quite flush, so I drilled just a little more, and now that fits in there completely flush. It just keeps from having a gap. Put the screws on. I'm going to test one out before I finish the rest of them. If I didn't use the Forstner bit and recess this, you would have a gap in between that area there. So I finished the other one. I don't usually use these types of feet, but I just couldn't see any other type of feet with the details on the corners of this dresser. And now it's time to stand this beast up. This is one heavy dresser. And there she is with her new feet. Let's take a look back at where we started. And this is where we are now. A beautiful, creamy white, very modern look. I love how this turned out. I hope you like it. Stay tuned for more.